The war had ended, but the wounds still remained. The Ruktal, a species of towering warriors covered in thick, battle-worn scales, had once been humanity's fiercest enemies. Now, a fragile truce had been negotiated, but it needed one final act to be sealed, a bonding between a human and a Ruktal warrior. The Ruktal were not known for kindness. They respected only strength. Their warriors stood over 8 feet tall, their bodies built for war, their eyes burning with the memories of battle. When the bonding ritual was announced, no human soldier volunteered. Not even the bravest among them wanted to stand face to face with a warrior who could crush them with a single blow. But Lieutenant Carter was different. He had fought on the front lines against the Ruktal. He had seen both their fury and their honor. Unlike the others, he did not fear them. He respected them. And that was why, when the command was given, he stepped forward. "I'll do it." Silence fell across the room. The other soldiers stared at him. The Ruktal, gathered in the negotiation hall, let out a low, rumbling growl. The Ruktal leader, Chieftain Gorzhul, narrowed his glowing yellow eyes. "You?" His deep voice rumbled like thunder. "You think yourself worthy of bonding with a Ruktal warrior?" Carter stood his ground. "Yes." Gorzhul glanced at his warriors, then pointed to the largest among them. A massive Ruktal stepped forward. His dark red scales were scarred from countless battles, and his eyes held nothing but cold indifference. "This is Verka," the chieftain said. "He is one of our strongest. If you wish to bond, you must prove yourself against him." Carter's heart pounded. He wasn't foolish. Verka could break him in half without trying. But this wasn't just about fighting. It was about earning respect. Verka stepped forward, towering over Carter like a mountain. "A human. They send me a human." His voice was filled with disdain. "You will not last." Carter clenched his fists. "Let's find out." The challenge begins. The arena was nothing more than a circle of rough stone in the center of the negotiation hall. Ruktal warriors and human soldiers gathered around, waiting to see what would happen. Verka rolled his shoulders, his muscles flexing. "We do not fight to kill, but you will feel pain, human." Carter nodded. "Same for you." With a sudden burst of speed, Verka lunged. He was fast, too fast for something so big. Carter barely dodged as a massive fist slammed into the ground, shaking the arena. The impact sent Carter stumbling, but he recovered quickly. He wasn't going to win by matching strength. He had to outthink his opponent. Verka came at him again. Carter ducked, rolled to the side, and struck hard against the alien's ribs. It was like punching a steel wall. Verka grunted, barely reacting. Then, with a single swipe of his arm, he sent Carter crashing to the ground. Pain shot through Carter's body, but he forced himself to stand. He wasn't done yet. The Ruktal warriors laughed, watching their champion dominate the fight. The human soldiers winced, expecting Carter to surrender. But Carter smiled. Verka frowned. "You should stay down." Carter wiped blood from his lip. Not a chance. Winning respect. Verka charged again, aiming to end the fight. This time, Carter was ready. Instead of dodging completely, he sidestepped just enough and grabbed onto the Ruktal's arm. Using his momentum, he twisted and threw all his weight into tripping Verka. The massive alien stumbled, not much, but enough to make the crowd go silent. Carter stepped back, breathing hard. "You're strong," he admitted, "but humans don't quit." Verka studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time, something changed in his expression. He was curious. He lifted a hand, and before Carter could react, he grabbed the human's forearm in a warrior's grip. The Ruktal warriors murmured in surprise. Even Gorzhul raised an eyebrow. "The bonding trial is not finished," Verka said. "But perhaps you are not as weak as I thought." Carter grinned, ignoring the pain in his ribs. "Good. Then let's keep going." The room erupted with cheers and growls as the true trial was about to begin. The real test of their bond had just started. The crowd of Ruktal warriors and human soldiers watched in stunned silence. No one had expected Carter to last even a minute against Verka, the towering alien warrior who could crush bones with a single strike. But Carter was still standing. Verka studied him with narrowed eyes, his massive frame still and calculating. His respect had not been earned yet, but his curiosity had been awakened. Chieftain Gorzhul, seated on his stone throne, let out a deep chuckle. It seems this human has more fight than I thought. Carter, still breathing hard, wiped the sweat from his brow. His body ached, but he refused to show weakness. "So, what's next?" he asked, his voice steady. Verka crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "You passed the first test, but strength is not only in the fists. It is in the will to endure. Do you understand, human?" Carter nodded. "I think I do." Verka motioned toward the next challenge, a trial of endurance designed to push warriors to their limits. The gauntlet begins. Carter followed Verka into the heart of the Ruktal stronghold, where an ancient training ground awaited. The floor was lined with stone, and the walls were covered in carvings of Ruktal warriors overcoming impossible trials. Verka gestured toward the 3 endurance challenges that Carter would have to complete. The Ice Walk, a frozen tunnel where warriors had to push forward while their bodies fought against the extreme cold. The Fire Stones, a path of searing hot stones that tested a warrior's ability to withstand pain. The Climb of Judgment, a sheer rock wall that had to be climbed without ropes, using only strength and willpower. The human soldiers watching from the side looked concerned. This test had been created for Ruktal warriors, not for fragile human bodies. But Carter did not hesitate. He stepped forward. "Let's do this." Trial 1, the Ice Walk. The tunnel was colder than anything Carter had ever felt. The air was sharp, freezing his breath before it left his lips. The Ruktal warriors smirked, expecting him to shiver and collapse. Even their kind struggled with this test. Carter gritted his teeth. Pain was just another obstacle. He forced himself forward, 1 step at a time. His muscles screamed as the cold sank deep into his bones. He had no protective armor, no thermal gear, just his sheer will to keep moving. Verka watched from the other end of the tunnel, arms crossed, waiting to see if Carter would break. But Carter kept walking. His vision blurred. His legs felt like heavy stone. But he focused on one thing, 1 step at a time. After what felt like an eternity, he stumbled out of the tunnel. His skin was blue from the cold, his breath shallow, but he was still standing. The Ruktal warriors stopped smirking. Verka nodded, impressed. "You endure," he admitted, "but we are not finished yet." Trial 2, the Firestones. Carter stepped onto the scorching path, his boots pressing against the burning stones. Heat rose in waves, making it hard to breathe. The stones scorched his feet, even through his boots. His instincts screamed at him to run, to jump off. But Carter clenched his fists. Pain is just another test. He walked slowly, carefully, forcing himself to keep his balance. Halfway across, the heat became unbearable. His vision swam. His body wanted to collapse. But then he heard a deep voice behind him. "Do not stop." Verka had stepped onto the firestones behind him, walking at his pace. "If you fall, you fail," the alien warrior said. "Show me your strength." Carter gritted his teeth. He wouldn't fail. With one final step, he crossed the firestones and collapsed on the cool ground. The Ruktal warriors looked at each other. Some of them nodded, acknowledging Carter's resilience. But one final trial remained. Trial 3, the Climb of Judgment. A towering rock wall stood before them, smooth and almost impossible to climb. No tools, no ropes. Only raw strength and willpower could bring a warrior to the top. Verka motioned to the wall. "Climb, human. Show me you are worthy." Carter took a deep breath. His body screamed in exhaustion, but he forced himself forward. The first few grips were easy, but soon his muscles ached and sweat dripped down his back. His fingers slipped on the smooth stone. Halfway up, his strength began to fail. The crowd watched in silence. Would the human fall? Then, Carter remembered his own training. He adjusted his grip, using leverage and balance instead of brute force. Slowly, steadily, he climbed higher. Verka watched him, his expression unreadable. He saw the determination in Carter's eyes, the same fire he had seen in his own kind. With a final pull, Carter reached the top. He lay there for a moment, breathing hard. Then he forced himself to stand. A deep, powerful growl of approval came from below. Verka nodded. "You have earned my respect, human." For the first time, Carter saw something in the alien warrior's gaze, not just curiosity, but recognition. This was no longer a test. It was the beginning of something greater. Carter stood at the top of the climb of judgment, his body aching, his breath heavy. Below him, the Ruktal warriors watched in silence. Some had expected him to fail. Many had wanted him to fail. But he didn't. He looked down at Verka, the towering alien who had challenged him to this trial. For the first time, there was no mockery in the Ruktal warrior's gaze. Instead, there was something else. Respect. Carter forced a grin. "So, did I pass?" Verka let out a deep, rumbling chuckle. "You survived." He paused, then added, "That is more than I expected." Carter took that as a yes. The chieftain, Gorjul, stepped forward. His golden eyes studied Carter with interest. "You have shown resilience, human," he said. "But endurance is only the first step." Carter tensed. "There's more." Gorjul nodded. "Yes, the final test is the bonding ritual. If you complete it, you will no longer be just a human soldier. You will be a warrior of the Ruktal." The Ruktal warriors murmured among themselves. This was a rare honor, one that had never been given to a human before. Verka turned to Carter. "This will not be easy," he warned. Carter let out a tired laugh. "Nothing has been easy so far." Verka nodded approvingly. "Then let us begin." The meaning of the bond. Carter followed Verka into the sacred hall, a massive chamber carved into the stone. Torches flickered along the walls, casting shadows over ancient carvings that told stories of legendary Ruktal warriors and their trials. In the center of the room was a stone altar covered in strange, glowing symbols. Verka gestured to it. "The bond is not just a ceremony," he said. "It is a connection between warriors. Through it, we will share strength, share pain, and share memory." Carter frowned. "Memory." Gorjul stepped forward. "Yes, the Ruktal bond is deeper than mere words. You will see each other's past, experience each other's lives. Only then can you truly fight as one." Carter's stomach tightened. He had heard about the Ruktal Mural Link, but experiencing it himself, that was another thing entirely. Verka studied him. "You can still refuse." Carter took a deep breath. This was bigger than him. This was about proving that humans could stand alongside the Ruktal, not as enemies, but as equals. "I'm not backing down," he said. Verka nodded, impressed. "Then let it begin." The link is formed. Carter placed his hands on the stone altar. Verka did the same. The symbols beneath their hands glowed brightly, and suddenly, a surge of energy rushed through Carter's mind. He gasped as his vision blurred. It felt like he was being pulled into another world. And then, he was no longer himself. The Ruktal's memories. Carter saw through Verka's eyes. He was standing on a battlefield, the ground shaking with explosions. He felt the weight of a massive Ruktal battle axe in his hands, the heat of battle coursing through his veins. Across from him were human soldiers, their weapons raised, their eyes filled with fear. Carter felt Verka's rage, but also his pain. He had lost comrades, just as Carter had. He had fought not because he wanted war, but because he had to. Then the vision shifted. Carter saw Verka as a young warrior, smaller than the others, struggling to prove himself. He felt the doubt, the frustration, the endless need to be stronger. And for the first time, Carter understood. Verica was not just a warrior. He was a survivor, just like him. Carter's memories. The energy surged again, and suddenly, Carter was back in his own past. But now, Verica was seeing through his eyes. A battlefield, fire and smoke filling the air. Carter watched as his squadmates fell, one by one. He remembered their names, their voices, their screams. He felt the helplessness, the pain of being the last one standing. Verica let out a low, deep breath. He had seen many warriors die. But now he felt what it was like to be human, to lose in a way that no physical wound could compare to. The vision faded, and suddenly, Carter was back in the chamber. His hands were shaking. His breath was unsteady. Across from him, Verica stood completely still. His golden eyes were no longer cold. Instead, they held something Carter had never seen in them before. Understanding. A warrior's respect. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Verica stepped forward and gripped Carter's forearm, the traditional Ructal warrior's salute. "You have seen my battles," he said, "and I have seen yours." Carter tightened his grip. "Then I guess we're even." A slow, genuine smile spread across Verica's face. "Perhaps." Chieftain Gorshul nodded in approval. "The bond is complete." He turned to the others. "From this day forward, this human stands among us, not as an outsider, but as a warrior." The Ructal warriors stomped their fists to their chests, a sign of respect. Carter let out a deep breath. He had done it. For the first time, a human and a Ructal had bonded. And this was only the beginning. Carter and Verica stood side by side in the ancient hall, their minds still buzzing from the experience. The Ructal warriors around them watched with a mix of respect and curiosity. For the first time in history, a human and a Ructal warrior were bonded. Chieftain Gorshul stepped forward, his golden eyes unreadable. "The bond is strong," he said. "But strength is not enough. A warrior must also be loyal." Carter frowned. "What do you mean?" Verica glanced at him before turning back to the chieftain. "He means there is another test." Carter sighed. "Of course there is." The chieftain smirked. "You have proven your strength. But now you must prove your loyalty to each other." He gestured to one of the warriors. "Take them to the trial grounds." The trial grounds. Carter and Verica walked side by side through the winding stone corridors of the Ructal stronghold. Torches flickered along the walls, casting shadows over the ancient carvings of warriors and their battles. As they approached the trial grounds, Carter noticed something unusual. No weapons were present, only a large stone arena surrounded by towering walls. Verica stopped at the entrance and looked at Carter. "This is the trial of trust." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Another fight." Verica let out a deep chuckle. "Not this time." Inside the arena, Gorshul stood with two Ructal elders. Their expressions were serious. "The bond between warriors is tested not in battle, but in sacrifice," Gorshul said. "Now you will prove your trust in one another." Carter exchanged a glance with Verica. "Okay, what do we have to do?" The chieftain's voice was calm but firm. "One of you must fall." The leap of trust. A tall stone pillar stood at the center of the arena. At its base, a deep pit was shrouded in darkness. Carter couldn't see the bottom, but the wind howled from below, making it clear that whatever was down there was not friendly. One of the elders stepped forward. "To complete the trial, one of you must jump from the pillar and trust the other to catch you before it is too late." Carter's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Verica's expression remained neutral, but Carter could tell he was thinking the same thing. Gorshul continued, "You are bonded warriors now. In battle, you must trust each other with your lives. If the bond is real, then one of you will be willing to fall, and the other will be ready to save them." Carter stared at the chieftain. "So, if we fail?" The elder did not smile. Then the bond was weak. Carter took a deep breath. This was insane, but he had come too far to back down now. He turned to Verka. "I'll do it." Verka's expression hardened. "Are you sure?" Carter smirked. "Come on, big guy. I thought you were strong." Verka huffed, but nodded. "Then climb." The fall, Carter climbed the tall stone pillar, feeling the rough texture of the rock beneath his fingers. The higher he went, the stronger the wind became. When he reached the top, he glanced down. The pit below was nothing but blackness. Carter swallowed hard. This was probably the dumbest thing he had ever done. He looked at Verka, standing below, his arms ready. Carter took a deep breath. Trust the bond. Then he jumped. The air rushed past him, his stomach twisting in freefall. The darkness below seemed endless. But just before panic set in, a powerful grip closed around his wrist. Verka had caught him. For a moment, they hung there, Carter dangling over the abyss, Verka holding onto him with his massive strength. Then, with a grunt, the Ruktal warrior pulled Carter up in one powerful motion. Carter landed on the stone floor, breathing hard. He looked up at Verka and let out a breathless laugh. That was fun. Verka chuckled. "You are insane, human." Gorjul stepped forward. His expression was unreadable for a moment. Then he nodded in approval. The bond is true. The Ruktal warriors around them let out a deep battle cry, pounding their chests in respect. Carter looked at Verka. "I guess that means we passed." Verka smirked. "Yes. And now, human, you are truly one of us." For the first time, Carter felt it too. He wasn't just a human soldier anymore. He was a warrior of the Ruktal. Carter had done the impossible. He had passed the trial of trust, proving his loyalty to Verka and the Ruktal. For the first time, a human and a Ruktal warrior were bonded. As Carter stood beside Verka in the warriors' hall, he could feel the shift in the air. The Ruktal warriors no longer looked at him as an outsider. They acknowledged him as one of their own. But not all of them. Whispers in the shadows. Later that night, Carter sat beside a massive fire in the stronghold, surrounded by warriors sharing stories of past battles. The mood was lighter, the tension of the trials fading. But as he listened to the rumbling voices, he noticed something odd. Some warriors, especially the older ones, whispered among themselves, glancing at him with suspicion. Verka, sitting beside him, noticed it too. His golden eyes darkened. Not all Ruktal welcomed change. Carter frowned. "You mean, they still don't accept me?" Verka shook his head. "Some do. Many do. But there are those who believe that humans and Ruktal should not mix." Carter exhaled. He wasn't surprised. Acceptance didn't come overnight, but something about the way Verka said it made his gut tighten. "Is it just talk?" Carter asked. Verka hesitated. Then, in a low voice, he said, "I do not know." The ambush. That night, Carter was resting in his assigned chamber when a sudden noise outside made him sit up. The stronghold was silent, but something felt wrong. Then, a heavy footstep. Carter rolled off his cot just in time. The door to his chamber slammed open, and 3 Ruktal warriors stormed in, their eyes cold and unforgiving. They were not here to talk. One of them, a massive warrior with dark red scales, pointed a spear at him. "You do not belong here, human." Carter's heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "I passed the trials. I earned my place." The warrior snarled. "You mock our traditions. A Ruktal bonds with another warrior of their own kind, not with you." Carter slowly raised his hands. "So what's the plan? You throw me out?" The warrior stepped forward, gripping his spear tighter. "No, we make sure this mistake never happened." Carter understood immediately. They weren't here to scare him. They were here to kill him. The fight for survival. Before they could strike, Carter moved first. He grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the first warrior, forcing him to stumble back. Then, without thinking, he dove for the doorway, sprinting into the dark corridors of the stronghold. Shouts erupted behind him as the warriors gave chase. Carter's mind raced. He was fast, but these warriors were stronger, bigger, and knew the layout of the stronghold better than he did. He had to think fast. He turned a sharp corner and slid behind a large stone pillar, pressing himself against the shadows. His breathing was quick, his heart pounding. The warriors ran past him, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. For a moment, he thought he was safe, until a massive hand grabbed him from behind. Verka's fury. Carter spun, ready to fight, but stopped when he saw Verka towering over him. His bonded warrior's golden eyes burned with anger. "Who dares attack my bondmate?" Before Carter could answer, the three warriors came charging down the hall. But now, they stopped, because Verka was standing in front of Carter, and he was furious. One of the warriors hesitated. "Verka, this is not your fight." Verka stepped forward, his massive shoulders tense. "It is my fight because you tried to kill my bondmate." The leader of the group sneered. "This is not our way. He does not belong." Verka cut him off. "The chieftain accepted him. I accepted him. And yet you betray your own kind by breaking the laws of the Ruktal." The warriors exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected Carter to be alone. They had not expected Verka to defend him. Verka stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "Leave, now, or face the consequences." The warriors hesitated, then slowly backed away, disappearing into the darkness. Only when they were gone did Carter finally exhale. A new enemy. Verka turned to him. "Are you hurt?" Carter shook his head. "I'm fine. Thanks to you." Verka's expression remained serious. "This is not over. They will try again." Carter frowned. "Then what do we do?" Verka's golden eyes burned with determination. "We fight back. Together." Carter nodded. He had faced enemies before, but now he wasn't alone. Now he had a bonded warrior by his side. Carter sat on a stone bench, rubbing his temple. The attack in the night had been a warning. There were Ruktal warriors who still saw him as an outsider, a human who had no place in their traditions. Verka stood nearby, his golden eyes sharp. He had saved Carter once, but he knew the threat was not over. "They will try again," Verka said. "And next time, they will be smarter." Carter exhaled. "Then we need to be ready." The two warriors looked at each other. They were bonded now, not just by ritual, but by trust and survival. And if their enemies wanted a fight, they would give them one. The trap is set. Instead of waiting for another ambush, Carter and Verka decided to turn the tables. They knew the rogue warriors would strike again, but this time, Carter and Verka would be prepared. They left rumors in the stronghold, spreading the idea that Carter would be alone in the lower tunnels for a warrior's meditation ritual. It was a lie, but the traitors would believe it. When night came, Carter sat in the dark waiting. His pulse was steady, his body ready. Verka was hidden nearby, his massive form blending into the shadows. Then, the footsteps came. Carter tensed as three warriors appeared at the entrance of the tunnel. The same warriors who had attacked him before. The leader smirked. "Foolish human, you should have left when you had the chance." Carter smiled. "I was about to say the same thing." Before they could react, a deep growl echoed through the tunnel. And then, Verka struck. The battle in the dark. Verka moved like a storm of muscle and fury, his massive fists sending two warriors crashing into the walls. Carter didn't hesitate. He dove forward, tackling the third warrior and twisting his arm, forcing him to drop his weapon. The leader of the traitors snarled, swinging his spear at Carter. But Carter ducked, grabbing a loose stone and slamming it into his knee. The warrior stumbled, roaring in pain. He gestured to a warrior beside him, who stepped forward carrying a large metal bracer, decorated with ancient Ruktal symbols. The warrior placed it in Gorjol's hands, and the chieftain held it out to Carter. "This is the bracer of the blood bond," Gorjol said. "It is given only to those who have formed a warrior's bond that cannot be broken." Carter hesitated, then slowly took the bracer. It was heavy, solid, its surface etched with the history of warriors who had worn it before him. Verka stepped forward. "This means you are not just a warrior, Carter. You are my battle brother." Carter looked up at him, realization hitting him. This wasn't just a symbol. It was a declaration that Verka would stand beside him for life. And in that moment, Carter understood. He was no longer just a human soldier. He was a Ruktal warrior. A new future. The next few days passed quickly. The tension in the stronghold was gone, and for the first time, Carter was treated as an equal. He trained with the warriors, shared meals with them, and even learned their traditions. One night, as he and Verka sat by the great fire, Carter turned to his bonded warrior. "So what now?" Verka took a deep breath. "There are battles ahead, Carter. There are still those who see our bond as a mistake." Carter smirked. "Let them try and break it." Verka chuckled. "I would like to see them try." The two warriors sat in silence for a moment, watching the flames dance. Then, Carter glanced at his new bracer of the blood bond, a small smile forming. He had come here as an outsider. Now he had a brother. And no matter what battles lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure. He would never fight alone again. The end. He gestured to a warrior beside him, who stepped forward carrying a large metal bracer, decorated with ancient Ruktal symbols. The warrior placed it in Gorjol's hands, and the chieftain held it out to Carter. "This is the bracer of the blood bond," Gorjol said. "It is given only to those who have formed a warrior's bond that cannot be broken." Carter hesitated, then slowly took the bracer. It was heavy, solid, its surface etched with the history of warriors who had worn it before him. Verka stepped forward. "This means you are not just a warrior, Carter. You are my battle brother." Carter looked up at him, realization hitting him. This wasn't just a symbol. It was a declaration that Verka would stand beside him for life. And in that moment, Carter understood. He was no longer just a human soldier. He was a Ruktal warrior. A new future. The next few days passed quickly. The tension in the stronghold was gone, and for the first time, Carter was treated as an equal. He trained with the warriors, shared meals with them, and even learned their traditions. One night, as he and Verka sat by the great fire, Carter turned to his bonded warrior. "So, what now?" Verka took a deep breath. "There are battles ahead, Carter. There are still those who see our bond as a mistake." Carter smirked. "Let them try and break it." Verka chuckled. "I would like to see them try." The two warriors sat in silence for a moment, watching the flames dance. Then, Carter glanced at his new bracer of the blood bond, a small smile forming. He had come here as an outsider. Now he had a brother. And no matter what battles lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure. He would never fight alone again. The end.